In the last 3 years of running outbound campaigns, we have made just over 400,000 cold calls. In today's video, I'm going to walk through how many follow-ups does it take to actually close a deal, run you through a simple structure that you can start using in your own campaigns, and just go through some of the mistakes I see when I normally go to review these campaigns. So let's dive in. Now, the problem that I see with most people's follow-up sequence is that it kind of looks a little bit something like this. And it will be, they'll make the initial call, which we'll call call number 1. They'll send maybe an email afterwards on the same day. If they don't respond after a couple of days, maybe another email. And if you're lucky, maybe one more follow-up call after like that. We've typically seen that about 44% of salespeople drop off after call number 2. Look, if you're really lucky, you might even get salespeople that make 2 more calls after that, maybe even 3 more calls after that. But about 90% of salespeople drop off after call number 3. Now, you might think that after you've called them, sent them a couple of emails, and even called them back 2 or 3 times, and they haven't responded to any of it, it's probably a dead lead, right? The interesting part is that the data actually suggests the complete opposite. The data we have seen when we run these outbound campaigns is that most conversions actually come after the 4th or 5th touch point, not the 2nd and not the 3rd, which means if you're only doing 2 or 3 calls afterwards, you're missing out on so much of your pipeline. You've got to remember, these people are very busy, right? So if you're only limiting to yourself to a call, a couple of emails, and a couple of phone calls afterwards, chances are you're never going to get through to these guys. And you're basically just quitting early. So remember, when you're doing your pipeline and you're following up these prospects, just remember the leads themselves aren't dead. It's your follow-up sequence that's dead, right? You need to be following up with these guys way more than you are. Now let's talk about the structure you actually need to be following to close more deals. Phase number 1, the Blitz. Similar to the first interaction, when you call these people, right, call number 1, send an email immediately after, right? Not a day after, not a few days after, immediately after you make that first phone call. And next, if they haven't responded, a couple of days later, right, send email number 2. Now, it's really important when you're sending these emails not to just be sending generic rubbish, like, hey, just checking in, or hey, just circling back around. Your email sequences should always be adding value to your service every single time you send one. So, a couple of days after email number 2 has gone out, again, if they still haven't responded to that, you want to send email number 3. Email number 3 should be very short and simply just saying it, hey, have you seen my other 2 emails? If not, I'm going to call you back tomorrow. And what this does is it signals them to either get back in touch because they don't want to receive a phone call from you, or they get back in touch and say, oh, before you call me, this is where I'm at. So that should leave you on day number 6 of running this sequence. You've given them 1 call, sent 3 emails, and told them on email number 3 that if they haven't gotten back to you, you're going to call them the next day. So what do you do on day number 6? That's right, you call them. If they still haven't responded to that phone call, again, don't treat it as a dead lead because the data suggests otherwise. Most conversions come from the 4th or the 5th call or touch point. If they haven't picked up on day number 6, I want you to call these guys every single day for the next 5 days. Because chances are they could be in a meeting or they haven't seen your email. Again, you've got to remember these guys are busy, so you need to stay on top of your follow-ups. Now look, if you're looking at phase 1 and saying, oh, this is a bit too much following up, or maybe you're calling these guys too much, what if they get annoyed? Truthfully, if they don't respond to any of your emails and they pick up the phone and say, I'm not interested, stop reaching out to me, chances are they weren't an interested lead in the first place. All you're really trying to do with this system is get to that answer sooner, whether it be a no, which in most cases it probably will be, or try and get them to that yes as fast as possible. Because if you sit there and say, oh, well, I don't want to follow up with these guys too much, what if they get annoyed? Chances are you're going to be left in limbo, right? Where you don't know if it's a no, you don't know if it's a yes, and you're too scared to follow up with them, so it sits in your pipeline and it ends up doing nothing, which doesn't help anyone. So phase number 2 is structure. Basically, what you want to be doing with this is just dropping a call and an email once per week for around about 4 weeks. And what I'd recommend doing in this stage as well is just whilst you're at it, just drop a WhatsApp or a LinkedIn in there. Just, in the first couple of weeks or third and fourth week, just drop it in there. Again, try a multi-channel approach if they're not responding to any of this. Before you start thinking, oh, well, you're doing all of this follow-up and they're not getting back to you at all, no reply does not mean it's a dead lead. These guys are just busy. Just keep following up with them. Now for phase 3, if they haven't responded to any of this 6 weeks of outreach you're doing to them, chances are the timing's just not right for them or they're incredibly busy. So after this, you want to move them into what I like to call a bit of a nurture sequence. The nurture sequence just involves sending them an email just once every 3 weeks or so. Again, trying to deliver some value in this, not just circling back around or hey, just following back up. And as well, once every 4 weeks, just sending them a bespoke email. Now, you would be amazed by how many people come back to one of these. You can even automate and template some of this stuff, but again, try and make it look like you've actually decided to follow up with these people, and I guarantee some of the responses you'll get are going to be way, way higher. Look, you're probably also asking yourself the question of, does any of this actually work, and what do the numbers look like? So to give you an idea, let's just go through it. In terms of the initial follow-up, you're probably going to see about 10 to 15% of your bookings just come from cold call number 1. And typically the Blitz section of this actually converts about 50 to 60% of your pipeline. The structure converts another 20 to 25%. And lastly, the nurture section is another about 5 to 10%. Hopefully you can start to see how some of these numbers make sense. Most of your conversations and conversions are going to come from call number 1 and the Blitz section when the leads are the hottest. However, if you're skipping out on phase 2 and phase number 3, you're actually missing out on between 20 to 25% in phase 2 and another sort of 5 to 10% in stage number 3. And when you add all of that up, I mean, that's another 30% in pipeline that you're missing out on by just doing phase number 1. Or worse than that, just doing 2 or 3 phone calls after reaching out to someone. And just real quick, if you want a little bit more of an in-depth breakdown on how some of these numbers work and the exact templates that we use, I've linked the cold call scaling roadmap in the description. It's free, so check it out and just let me know what you think. The main takeaway is you need a structured way to follow up with your potential prospects, because if you're not doing these extra follow-ups that you might just think are redundant or a waste of time, you're actually missing out on 30% of your pipeline going forward, which is ultimately just leaving money on the table. And look, the more follow-up calls you guys are making, the more objections you guys are probably going to start running into. Which is why in the next video, I'm going to break down the 4 most common objections that I see when running these campaigns and just how to correctly handle them. So subscribe and stay tuned.